James Senegal once said, "Technology helps us become more efficient and productive, but our business still has a lot of art as opposed to strictly science." Are you tinkering, self-learning, self-improving, experimenting with home labbing? And do you want to become a skilled IT expert? Well, you've found your new home. This is the Home Labbers Podcast. On this show, we'll interview top experts and dig deep to learn how they got started and how they trained their IT skills as a master martial artist in a Shaolin temple. And you know what? We're going to have fun along the way. This is the Home Labbers Podcast. And now your host, Vian Du.
All right, let's do this.
Michelle, welcome to the podcast. So excited to have you on the podcast. Before we dive into the home lab topic, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm Michelle. I am 19 right now. As we record this, I mean that there's not an awful much to say. I recently got my first job, so that's fun. But other than that, I spent all my time in my home lab and breaking things, as we all do.
And how did you get started with your home labbing, and where did you get the idea?
Well, it started many years ago. I grew up in the house with my family, of which my great uncle and my dad, they had their own computer repair shop at home as I was born. And so that's what got me into computers, like you see these things, you're like 6 and you're curious, like, hey, what does this do? So then that eventually grew into me working with computers from a very young age. And then that interest eventually grew to servers and more like enterprise gear, enterprise networking and such. And then at one point I was like, I like watching videos about servers. I should get my own. And then that got a bit out of hand and now I have 3.
So how did your first home lab look like?
I mean, my first lab, quote unquote lab, was just my gaming laptop that I had VMware Workstation on, and I just ran some VMs on that. Then I got my first server, which was a HP ProLiant DL140 Generation 3, which is very old. It is back from the time that hyperthreading did not exist. So you had these 120 watt CPUs that could barely run a thing, but it was great at the time because it was the only thing I could afford. So I had 2 of those at max. They were full with 32 gigs of RAM. That was all they could hold. And they had 2 4-core CPUs, no hyperthreading. So 8 cores, 8 threads total. Was very happy with it. But looking back, comparing to what I have now, I have no idea how I pulled that off. Because I'm definitely using a lot more than that right now.
But what was your first home lab project, what you used for?
My first project was learning VMware ESXi, learning vCenter. I mean, that's what I ran on the hardware, so that was learning step 1. Because I knew I wanted to dedicate some time to learn some VMware products. So that's why I started with the lab, and then not only that, but then also teach myself some basic sysadmin skills, like Active Directory and that stuff, Linux, and that usual list.
And now you are VMware certified as well, right? You got the certification.
Yes, I am unofficially the youngest VCP holder.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I have been interviewed about that 3 times already.
Nice.
Seems like it doesn't happen every day.
Indeed. But how did you fund your home lab?
Funding?
Yes.
Saving up, borrowing money, waiting like a very long time to get simple things, because the only real income I had like first was like the money my parents gave me, but this was when I was like 12. Then that eventually grew up into that dropped, and then I had disability benefit, which I scraped some money in my home lab wallet, so to say, each month. And then after like 2 years, I could buy some nice gear. And then recently I replaced it all. So it has been a lot of patience, and I'm not nowhere near where I want to be. There's still a lot of bottlenecks in my lab, but I'm getting there. It takes a long time. That's what I'm trying to say. Lots of waiting. 5 years ago, I had that server from 2008. Now I have a bit newer gear. It's still not the latest, but it's a lot better compared to the first servers that I bought.
How your home lab looks right now, and what do you have now there?
Yeah, my home lab is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, is 6U in total. It used to be 12, downsized in U, but increased in capacity as I bought newer servers. So it's weird to think how far servers come, because the servers I have now, they have more than twice the CPU capacity of my old servers, yet they draw less power, which is good because I also pay for power in the data center. I have 3 servers right now. I have 2 ProLiant DL360 Generation 8s. Those are 1U, and I have 1 380 G8, which is a 2U. The reason I have 2 1Us and 1 2U is because my home lab isn't actually at home. It's in a rack that I rent, partially. Mainly because I still live with my parents, and otherwise they'll be very angry at me with the power bill. As all of our home labbers know, servers suck a lot of money from the power bill. Like they cost a lot of money. So the reason I have those 2 1Us is because I partially pay per U, so less to pay. And then the 2U is so I have more PCI slots for like NVMe SSDs, or like a 10 gig network cards, or whatever that I may want to put in there. I think right now it's just full of NVMe SSDs in adapter cards. So those are the 3 servers I have. All servers have the same CPU. They both have dual 10 cores, 2.2 gigahertz, so 20 cores, 40 threads per server. So that gives a nice total. 2 of them have 352 gigs of RAM. The other one has 192. So that's like 800 some change, almost 900 gigs of memory. And then there's like a mixed match of drives that I've been getting as I need them. So some of them are like as old as the first server I had, and others I bought like 2 months ago. So there's no mass hardware. So there's no like fancy drive clustering and such, because all of the drives are just what I have bought over the years. And then there's a 1 gig switch, a 24 port. I've been willing to get 10 gig, but haven't had the money yet because that's quite the upgrade, quite a costly upgrade. And then there's like a simple router I have for the uplink for the main network, for the main network for the servers, because it's in a DC. So I have some extra things that I need to take care of.
And what software are you running right now?
Let's see. I have ESXi on the host, vCenter to manage them. I have NSXT for the virtual lab networks. Then I have Cloud Director for myself to play with. I have a Horizon setup. I have a VMware SASE or SD-WAN or whatever they call it nowadays deployment, so like an orchestrator and gateway setup. I have Tanzu, multiple clusters, and probably more that I cannot think of right now. But I have like 150 VMs, so there's a lot running.
How much knowledge have you gained while having a home lab? And how it helped you get the VMware certification?
Well, everything. Fun fact, I did not learn from my certification. Everything I learned was in my lab. I did not specifically learn just for the cert. So everything is safe to say.
So you were just playing with your home lab and you passed the exam very easily.
Yes, I did.
What is the most memorable home lab story you like to share?
That will be, the most memorable are two, I think. One is that I think the main story that still sticks with me is the time that I was having an issue. I could intermittently not connect to virtual machines. And then I restarted the vCenter server, and then I could not connect anymore at all. But then later I realized that none of it was the issue, because more and more packets starting to drop, and it wasn't my own home internet either, because other sites worked. So I was about to get the car or get someone to drive me to the data center, to only find out afterwards that it was not my problem. It was literally the entire data center was disconnected from the internet. And I've been stressing for the past 2 hours before that it was on my end. But then I tried to load the site of the data center, and that did not load either. So I called the owner of the data center. It was 12 at night for the both of us. And he was asleep, so I called him, and he woke up and he said like, "Hey, what's wrong? Why are you calling me at like 12 at night? Because you usually don't make people happy if you call them at 12 at night." So I told him like, "Yeah, do you know that your entire data center is offline?" And all he said was, "What?" And then there was like a 3-second silence, and he was like, "Okay, so did you do this and this?" And I said, "Yes, I did this, and that. Your site is down too. So it's definitely not on my end. And I want you to check first before I actually get in the car and drive over there, which takes 15 minutes. And gasoline is really expensive right now." And then indeed, as we were on the phone, he said, "Yes, it is indeed down." And then we on the phone, we said, "Okay, once it's back up, call me again." And then it was like 3:30 at night when he called me, and we were both like zombies at our keyboards at that point, and I still remember that. And he sounded very happy that it has been resolved, and I was too, and we just both went to bed. That's one story that still sticks out. And then there's another one that isn't really a story, but just like gratefulness in general for the home lab community, because a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but there are people that have helped me and even donated unused gear to me to make my home lab upgrades easier. That's also something that really sticks out, that if you're like close enough to them, like physically, so you can drive there and pick up stuff, then they're willing to share old hardware that is new to me, but old to them. And that's also something that makes me really happy, because that has also helped a ton the past few months with upgrades. Because before I upgraded my older servers, which were Generation 6s, they were like crashing once a day, and it was really, really stressful. So one other very interesting thing or memory that stuck with me regarding my lab is when I picked this specific data center that I am right now to move my servers to there. The first appointment I had with the owner, which was like checking the data center, seeing if it fits my needs, signing the contracts, and all that stuff. I arrived at the data center, and this data center has a fence, an electric fence around it with a gate. So he had to open the gate. So then he walked outside, he opened the gate for me, and he asked me, like, hey, what are you doing here? And I said, I have an appointment with X person for a tour around the data center, and then sign all the legal shenanigans and stuff, so I can put my servers there, because I had the servers in the trunk of the car. And he was like, wait, you are? And I said, yes, that's me. And then he told me he was expecting multiple people from like a company, and then there was like me with my mom standing in front of him. And we laughed at it, but I could see he was really blushing, and that is also something that really sticks out to this day, because to this day I am the only non-company person in that entire data center, and he has a lot of customers, and I'm the only one that's not a company. So that's another thing that I still remember very clearly.
Do you have some other scariest home lab stories to share?
I mean, I'm not sure, like specifically scary. I mean, it is scary if you lock yourself out and need to. In my case, it is scary if you lock yourself out, because if your home lab is at home, you like plug in an Ethernet cable in the back of your server, or you hook up like a keyboard and mouse in VGA, or you log into the ILO, and then you can fix it. If it's in a data center and you lock yourself out, you have to drive to the data center, which always is really scary when that happens. With the smallest maintenance thing I do, I'm always scared that I lock myself out. So I have 4 ways to get in at this point, just like the main way, and then a backup, and then the backup of a backup, and so on.
But actually, you're learning a lot by doing these things.
Yes, I am. It's also useful knowledge in the field.
But what do you also think about you when they see your home lab or hear you have a home lab?
They think it's interesting, then they see it, and then they think I'm crazy, and then I tell them that it can still be a lot worse than that.
What is a home lab for you?
For me, it's not only a way to learn things, because of reasons I cannot get like a regular college degree. So I am completely self-taught on all my knowledge. And for me, it's not only a learning spot, but it's also still a hobby. Like the learning I do for my future is pretty much my hobby. And it's not just limited to VMware stuff. It's also more than that, more technologies, monitoring systems, some other products from different vendors that I work with right now. So it is my main hobby. It is safe to say I spend 85% of the time I am awake on my computer, of which 80% of that time that I am on my computer is when I am tinkering in my home lab at the moment. Now that'll change starting next week because I'll get a job, but it still has plenty of room to still tinker with my home lab, and it should also make my 10 gigabit upgrades easier financially. So I'm looking forward to that, but we'll see how it goes.
What one piece of advice would you give for beginner home labbers?
I would say, well, advice goes a lot of ways. You have the look at what you need and look if it's worth it. Like if you just need compute power, if you can, it is more expensive at first to build like a computer or a NUC. But like the alternative is like an older enterprise server, which gives you like that experience as well, but those suck a lot more power. So those are all things to consider. Like a lot of people forget that they buy all this hardware, but all that hardware also consumes a lot of power. A fun fact actually is one of my old DL140 generation 3s, 8 cores in total, 32 gigs of RAM. It took 350 watts of power. One of my servers I have today, let's get the 380 generation 8 as an example. It has 20 cores and 40 threads total with 352 gigs of RAM, and it only consumes 120 watts idle. Whereas my first server consumed idle around 300. So it seems good to cheap out, but when at first on the one-time price you pay when buying hardware. But the advice I want to give is look further than that, because trust me, it's going to be worth to pay a bit more up first, because you will save a lot of power every month.
That's so true. Michelle, thank you so much for joining, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You as well.
You've been listening to the Home Labbers Podcast. Our passion is to interview the leading IT experts and get tech enthusiasts all the information they need to become an expert. So if you run at-home enterprise hardware and software, and you like tinkering and self-learning, then you've found your new podcast. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit up the website at vundo.tech, on Twitter at #VUndoTrending and #HomeLab. See you next time on the Home Labbers Podcast.